Welcome to the Slaughterhouse Cases Mock Trials, brought to you by the World Affairs Council of Austin. We will explore this landmark case and its profound impact on American law. The case began in the Civil District Court for the Parish of Orleans, Louisiana, between 1869 and 1870. This civil suit challenged a state-granted monopoly. The Louisiana legislature created the Crescent City Livestock Landing and Slaughterhouse Company, granting it a 25-year monopoly over all slaughtering in New Orleans. Independent butchers argued this destroyed their livelihoods and violated the 13th and 14th Amendments. New Orleans faced severe public health crises, including cholera and yellow fever. The state responded by centralizing all slaughtering into one regulated facility, operated exclusively by the Crescent City Company. Independent butchers were forced to rent space or close, and over 400 butchers sued, arguing the monopoly destroyed their trade. This highlights the conflict between public health and economic freedom. The butchers sought an injunction in state court, arguing the law violated the 13th and 14th Amendments. The trial court ruled for the state, upholding the monopoly as a legitimate public health measure. The butchers appealed through the Louisiana courts to the U.S. Supreme Court. The case was sparked by a monopoly on butchering, leading to a challenge under the newly ratified 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court's narrow 5-4 interpretation held that the 14th Amendment primarily protected formerly enslaved people, not economic regulation. This limited the amendment's scope, impacting civil rights and economic regulation, a legacy that continues to influence modern debates. We now examine the state of Louisiana's case in these mock trials. The state argued the law was a public health regulation, centralizing slaughtering to prevent disease. Butchers were not prohibited from working, only required to use the regulated facility. They asserted the 13th and 14th Amendments were not meant to regulate business licensing, and that states possess broad police power to regulate dangerous industries. The state's top arguments centered on public health, police powers, reinterpreting the 14th Amendment, federalism, and economic regulation for the common good. They argued consolidation was necessary to prevent disease and that the 14th Amendment was misread. Key witnesses for the state of Louisiana included Sanitary Inspector J.S. McHatton, who described deplorable conditions, and Dr. Erasmus Darwin Fenner, a physician who testified on health risks like cholera and typhoid fever from the unsanitary slaughterhouses. Additional witnesses included Charles T. Soniat, a former owner who testified about the difficulty of maintaining a sanitary facility amidst competition, and Mayor Lewis A. Wiltz, who oversaw the law's implementation and supported the centralized, unified approach to regulation. McHatton, the sanitary inspector, provided critical testimony regarding the deplorable conditions before the monopoly law. Dr. Fenner, a physician, offered expert testimony on the health risks associated with the unsanitary slaughterhouse industry. E.D. White, the attorney for the state, argued the 14th Amendment did not restrict state power to regulate for public welfare. His argument emphasized the importance of state police powers and helped establish limits on federal authority in this area. Sanitary Inspector McHatton described filthy slaughterhouse conditions and massive pollution of the Mississippi River. His testimony highlighted grave public health concerns, justifying the state's intervention through public health regulation. E.D. White, a skilled attorney, argued that the 14th Amendment did not restrict the police powers of states to protect public welfare. His arguments were instrumental in establishing limits on federal authority. Former slaughterhouse owner Soniat described the difficulty of maintaining sanitary facilities amid intense competition. His testimony supported the state's need for a centralized approach to control the chaos and disorder in the industry. Physician Fenner provided expert medical testimony, explaining the link between unsanitary conditions and the spread of diseases like cholera and typhoid. His statements reinforced the state's position that the monopoly was a necessary public health measure. Mayor Wiltz testified that he oversaw the law's implementation to address public health concerns. He supported the unified approach, noting that the Crescent City Company was chosen for its reputation for cleanliness and efficiency. Next, we will examine the defense case, representing the independent butchers challenging the monopoly. The defense's key witnesses included Richard B. Hill, a butcher who testified on the financial devastation of the monopoly, Dr. John H. Herron, who attested to unsanitary conditions at the monopoly's facilities, and Professor Thomas M. Cooley, a jurist who spoke on the constitutional implications of the 14th Amendment. The butchers' top arguments focused on economic liberty and the right to a livelihood, arguing the monopoly violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. They warned against the dangers of monopoly and challenged the scope of the state's police power, fearing future abuses. Richard B. Hill, a butcher, testified that the exclusive contract forced him to close his business, highlighting the human cost of the monopoly. His testimony showed how the law stifled competition and innovation in the industry. Dr. Heron, a physician and Board of Health member, argued that the monopoly led to unsanitary conditions and a lack of accountability at the new facility. He emphasized the importance of competition for public safety and health oversight. Veteran butcher McMullen spoke about the long history of the New Orleans butcher trade. He explained how the monopoly disrupted traditional customs, emphasizing the importance of preserving established ways of life and small businesses. Auguste Pavie testified on the monopoly's city-wide economic impact. He argued that the exclusive contract stifled growth and limited opportunities for small entrepreneurs, underscoring the need for greater competition and innovation. Professor Cooley, a renowned legal scholar, provided expert testimony on the constitutional implications. He argued that the monopoly violated the 14th Amendment and emphasized upholding principles of fairness and equality under the law. Professor Cooley's constitutional argument centered on the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. He asserted that granting the monopoly was a violation and emphasized the necessity of upholding constitutional principles of fairness and equality. The butchers challenged the state-granted monopoly, arguing it violated the 13th Amendment's ban on involuntary servitude. They asserted the 14th Amendment protected their right to pursue their trade and that the state regulation unfairly deprived them of economic liberty. The independent butchers, as the plaintiffs, claimed the law destroyed their trade, forcing them to rent space or shut down. They argued that the fees were excessive and the centralized facilities were inadequate. This concludes our video on the Slaughterhouse Cases mock trials.